think the title of this video is overstated, nothing more than a tease to get you to click on it, I promise you that if you watch it, you will be convinced that I truly believe that world music can change your life. Now, whether it actually does change your life, well, that's up to you. Recently, I watched a YouTube video that demonstrated a new virtual instrument from China. And the guy showed every feature in great detail and made the case that it was about as great a virtual instrument as money can buy. And he summed up by saying, "But I'll never use it." It didn't fit into the kind of music he was making or was willing to consider making, so that was that. And I guess his implicit point was that unless you're in the small group of Western musicians who have a previous interest in this particular Chinese instrument, ignore everything I just showed you about how great it is. It's not for you. Recently, Native Instruments gave away a Chinese virtual instrument, the Yangqin. Because of this, a lot of musicians have it. So I'm going to use the Yangqin as a focus for this video. Let me begin by telling you a story. It might not seem related, but it is. Back when I was in the film business, I got a call. They said, Ridley Scott is making a film about Columbus. Half of it's in little towns in Spain, and then the production goes to Costa Rica to shoot The New World. And are you interested? And I said, yeah, I'm very interested. So shortly after that, they mailed me a ticket, and I went to Spain. And during the next months, I went to places that I would never have gone to otherwise. I met hundreds of people, actors like Sigourney Weaver and Gerard Depardieu. I was connected with cultures I had very little knowledge about previously. And I had all these adventures that are stories I've been telling my friends ever since. But the thing is, when I got home to Brooklyn, New York, and I looked around, everything looked really strange to me. I was still in the Columbus movie. It made me feel like an immigrant in my own town. I'll tell you, it changed me in a profound way because it really made me think a little bit about the way I was living my life. But when I got that call to do the movie, I could have just said no, right? And then the entire experience would never have happened. It would all have just vanished into the ether. And why have I told you this long story that doesn't seem related at all to this subject? It's because I feel very strongly that the freebie, the Yangqin from Native Instruments, is exactly like that. It's a ticket to Willy Wonka's chocolate factory that you can take or forever let it pass you by. It's really up to you. But in order to take full advantage of it, you're going to have to do some work. You're going to have to explore and learn a few things about the real instrument and about Chinese music. Now, the Yangqin is spelled like this, but it's pronounced like this in Mandarin Chinese. It's a stringed instrument shaped like a trapezoid that is played with a pair of bamboo beaters called sticks. It's often referred to as the Chinese dulcimer. It has 4 bridges and 144 strings. There are variations of this kind of instrument with strings hit by beaters all over Asia and all over the world, from the Middle Eastern santur to the European cymbalum to the Appalachian dulcimer. The santur is by far the oldest, going back to 600 or 700 BC, and the Yangqin is only 500 years old. It's a newbie. One common theory about the instrument's creation is that a santur arrived in China either on the Silk Road or by sea, and they adapted it to Chinese culture. Even though it's 500 years, it is far from a museum piece. They're constantly developing it. When it started, it was only 2 bridges, and then it was 3 bridges, and in fact, it only went from 3 to 4 bridges in the 60s. Around that time, I believe, is when they started to build them with damper pedals. All these different constructions on the Yangqin changed very much the kind of music you could play on them. Let's look at these Yangqin sticks. Look how thin and bendable they are. They're the only beaters I know of from any instrument in the world that are made of bamboo. The other dulcimer type instruments all have beaters made of wood. Now the sticks have rubber tubing stretched across the hitting part, which gives the Yangqin a kind of dullish sound. But if you turn the stick around, you can get a much brighter sound. Look at how intricately they are designed. This little notch here marks exactly where your thumb goes when you hold the sticks correctly. And you can turn the stick around and use this part as a pick to pluck strings and do quick glissandos. The sticks start about a ½ inch wide and gradually taper down to about a 1/16 of an inch. So the part that's actually hitting the string is extremely delicate. Can you imagine hitting any drum with this? You wouldn't get a very loud sound. But you don't hit with these sticks. You bounce them off the strings. Now, if you're playing a guitar or a mandolin and you want to have a tremolo sound, you've got to do this. And if you're playing a violin and you want a tremolo sound, then you got to do this. But the bouncing on the strings, which is sometimes called rolling, is natural to a Yangqin, and from what I've observed, it's almost a default way of playing it. If you want to hear the whole thing, I put a link above, and I've also put a link at the end. Anyway, I think that if you're still watching this video, you already know a lot more than other Western musicians about the Yangqin. And I think that if you went back and played your native instrument's Yangqin, you might play it a little differently. You may even want to explore the other virtual Yangqin instruments that are available. If your curiosity is really engaged by this video, you can keep going with the Yangqin. You can read up on it. You can watch performances on YouTube, or even if you can in your town, go to live performances. I'm not here to lead you through all that because this video is actually not really about the Yangqin. It's about me trying to persuade you to immerse yourself in world music. And you can do that with any world instrument. So what I recommend is that you explore and then focus. A good way would be to save up for something like Ethno World or UVI's World Suite, and then play around with hundreds of instruments. Then when you find something that you fall in love with, focus on it. Why should we care about what the real instrument is? It's just a sound or a set of sounds. I mean, couldn't we just use it like it was a preset on a synthesizer, and who cares? Well, let me tell you another story. When Jimi Hendrix's Are You Experience came out, I was a teenager playing in rock bands. So I needed to learn how to play it. And as far as I was concerned at that point, it was like music that came from Mars. I'd never really heard anything that sounded like that before. So I went to the record player and I dropped the needle on the parts I was trying to learn, and I just played those little pieces hundreds of times for days until I finally got to the place where I felt I knew what the notes were. And then it took me weeks, really, after that, before I first played it properly. So my question to you is, do you think after I did all of that all that Jimi Hendrix just left my fingers and my brain and my heart, and that when I played a solo in the future, I didn't have a lot of that carried inside me? And I think it's that way when you expose yourself deeply to something that's maybe a little alien to the way you've always been doing things. It takes you to a new place, and you may blend what you learn into something new and into something that you may like better than anything you've done before.